is Rick Baucom. I'm one of the team members here at Inflectra. And today I'm joined by the CEO of Deploy 360, Patrick Quilter. Patrick has over 20 years of software experience leading fintech teams with organizations like Vanguard, Travelers Insurance, Geico, as well as working as a DevOps consultant within the DoD and other federal agencies. Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah. I know you're currently in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, but I understand you hail from New England and you're a Boston Red Sox fan.
That's right. Yep. Grew up in Connecticut. Loved all the Boston teams. Love the Red Sox. Other than the Celtics, unfortunately, there's not much to root for these days. Football has been terrible. And yeah, the Red Sox were a bit behind this year. The one thing that I did like though was being able to hop on Netflix and watch the documentary on the 2004 comeback against the Yankees.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah. So if
that
you
was a
haven't
time.
seen that or anybody hasn't seen that, I highly recommend it.
I'll put that on my activities list for sure. Today we're here to learn how to elevate your DevSecOps standards by integrating AI tools and requirements seamlessly. As a government and defense lead here at Inflectra, I find this topic very interesting because my customers are always looking for new ways to up their DevSecOps game with their software to make it more secure and more compliant. So I'm eager to get started. Well, y'all didn't come here to listen to me, so I'm going to go ahead and say, Patrick, we can get started. And again, welcome and take it away.
All right, great. Thanks for that setup and good to be here. Rick gave a thorough introduction about me, so I'd like to give you a little bit more history about our company. Basically, about 3 years ago, we focused primarily on the commercial sector. And we started developing a software development tool that basically aided developers and testers in the whole process of doing proper SDLC. We built a management wrapper around several different tool sets, and we would basically offer that as a managed service. So that slowly started to evolve over the past couple of years into what we call our DevSecOps platform, or another term that we like to use is the D360 software factory. So that was our commercial wing, but just recently we acquired a company that does 100% work for the Department of Defense. And over the last year and a half, that acquisition has had a significant influence on putting together our tooling. If there's folks here that come from the federal government defense side of the house, you've probably heard the term software factory and certainly DevSecOps. So you'll recognize a lot of the nomenclature, if you will, that I use during this presentation here. But that's basically how we came together under the roof. There was a strong managed service presence in our commercial wing as this product developed. And now we're taking it and making the company a little bit more streamlined, supporting the product and continuing to do managed services and continuing to serve the DoD under various different contracts. But we're in the market now to really make this software factory take off and support proper DevSecOps. So with that setup there, I will highlight again where our influence and inspiration really came from. Again, if you're already in the DoD, you've probably heard of the DoD group called CIO, and they're the ones that have been responsible and actually most recently came out with some new information providing proper DevSecOps guidance. And it's heavily focused on software supply chain. So the software supply chain is basically anything that you're using to develop an application. It could be code, it could be personnel, it could be continuous integration tools, it could be security scanning tools. All of these things make up the ecosystem of what you're doing to put together your applications and hopefully making sure that they're secure. And they publish some really well thought out information to not only support DoD, it's made public, it's on their website, this is all publicly facing information. But I always, even when I come across our commercial customers or anybody that we're talking to on the commercial side, I always suggest this publicly facing website because the information that's there is invaluable. It's well organized, easy to read, and with some proper thinking and planning, it provides a pathway to implement these strategies. So one of the things that you'll start to see as we get through the presentation and actually into the demo is some of the latest information that they published, updated information that basically breaks down this infinite loop here, which many of us have seen in many different formats and have a number of different phases. But this DevSecOps loop that's occurring right here, DoD has a particular view of the world. It's broken down into about 10 different phases with security activities, different ones occurring all throughout the life cycle here. And basically, they've broken the whole thing down into activities. So you can start at the planning phase and know that you have a certain list of activities to accomplish. Then move over to the development, build, test, all the way into the operations side. And all along the way, things are broken down a little bit more linearly so that you have somewhat of a checklist to follow. So keep that in mind. We'll circle back to that when we get into the demo portion. But just wanted to make that connection point there that, again, over the last year and a half, the type of work that we've been doing and the groups that we've been working with have really had an influence on how we're stringing out this product. Another thing that I'll mention right up front, because it was in the description, is we've built this product really to avoid vendor lock. So we know that there's a lot of competing solutions out there these days that are, they're trying to help on DevSecOps, they're trying to implement AI. We certainly know that they exist. However, one thing that we take a little bit different approach on is that we're not locked down to one holistic platform. We actually encourage using a smattering of tools. So you might go into an organization and they're using Jira in their planning phase. You might go into an organization and they're doing Java development. And then there's other organizations that are using the Microsoft suite of tools, the Azure DevOps platform. So a lot of what we provide helps provide a management layer on top of all that tooling. So it's never about the tools, it's more about the process that we're putting together. And then another thing that we're focused on very heavily, and we've been very excited with, just like a lot of other organizations with the AI boom, is that we're able to do a little bit more of teaching and educating, but through the tool itself, through the AI agents and all the things that we would normally do from a consulting standpoint. We can start to slowly figure out how to get that accomplished so that it's more directly assisting users that are using our software factory. All right, so with that said, just setting up the problems that we've seen. And again, these stem back a couple of years, and it's not that things haven't changed. It's just that from a DevSecOps perspective, the feeling is that we're working our way out of these problems. These were recognized a couple years ago, and we're still in that process now of trying to address these. But the big things have been that teams have been siloed. So you have your development teams, you have your testing teams. That's pretty standard. But maybe the bigger one is where we get the Sec and DevSecOps. There's a security team that has their own tooling, their own processes, their own things, their own view of the world that they're very careful of. And that traditionally has not been integrated in this DevOps cycle where we're trying to automate everything and push code and push build and make things move as fast as possible. Is that there's also this other discipline going on over here with a lot of different tool sets from a security standpoint that need to execute, and they're kind of left out of that automation loop. So with the DevSecOps, as we'll see, we're going to start bringing in that automation inside of the tool sets that we have, so that security tool sets are being done within this whole development process. Another area that we focused on with our product, or recognized it as being a limitation, is that there's not a lot of metrics out there that can tell you if if your team, the type of work, the proof of work, the impact that they're having. Like, how do we know that if we've made an attempt to bring the security tools into our pipelines, how can we really measure that? Is there a one-stop dashboard, if you will, that we can go to see that this particular work was actually done? So that's what we mean by proof of work. And then the other one is proof of value, and that's your traditional return on investment. We're automating things. We should be able to articulate what the return on that investment is, because it does take an effort to automate a process. And then once you have it, you should be recouping something. So there are those are the types of metrics that we're tracking. There's a lack of compliance and standards. So the compliance documentation is coming along. Some of the compliance in the past has been useful and insightful, but it doesn't map naturally to the automation that you can accomplish with DevSecOps or DevOps pipelines. And then what we mean by standards and putting the tools together correctly, there is a lot of can go wrong by putting together the tools the wrong way. So if you go outside of those standards, perhaps you're causing a security vulnerability right then and there by not understanding that there are standards and that there's a certain way to put these processes and put your SDLC together and apply that automation that we're talking about. And then again, security scans not being integrated early. I kind of already mentioned this, but there's a cost factor to this. If the security team is catching vulnerabilities or doing their static code analysis scans well after we've delivered a build, because we're just in our own DevOps pipeline, and they catch something, that's going to go all the way back to the beginning again for us to be able to address it. So there is a cost factor there by not having it sooner in the pipeline. And then lack of utilization standards and keeping them secure. So this is where, again, the latest that DoD CIO has put out was to really focus on the supply chain. So the supply chain is going to put the importance behind making sure there's no injection points. So an example that I like to use and to simplify what the solar wind example is all about here at the bottom of the example is, imagine if you did your development, you did your check-in to your CI tool that went off and built the application. Prior to that, it did a security scan to make sure the static code analysis was okay. But then when you got over into the next step, which is building the application, there is an attack into your CI tool that injects some malicious software. The security scan tool obviously missed it because that was a step prior to the build, but it got wrapped in and injected during your build process. Now you spit out your executable, and wherever that gets deployed, unfortunately, that might have a vulnerability in it. And this is what's meant by focusing on the security on the supply chain. It's not good enough anymore just to focus on the code. There's a problem with also the tools that you're using that make up the supply chain. So what is our solution here? So starting from the bottom up, here's the different ways that we tackle this. First of all, we work on hardened containers. That means that our platform has been virtualized. We can move and install this product on various different hardware. We can run it in the cloud, on a laptop if we wanted to, on on-prem servers. The entire solution is essentially container-based. So we make sure that those containers are wrapped up with the latest code, wrapped up with the latest tooling, and then they go through stringent scans themselves to discover any CVEs, and those get addressed, and the maintenance continues from there. And then the other things that we do to help for standardization is enforce tool configurations. So there's a lot of different ways that you can set up your various CI tools. And a lot of the, we've all probably, hopefully have heard the term now, infrastructure as code. So that's where the secret sauce is. If we can use infrastructure as code, we can develop what we call some type of templates to enforce the implementation standards. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, and that information can be shared across organizations and teams. And then from quality assurance has always been a strong suit in our group. We've had a quality assurance managed service for years that focuses on automated testing. And certainly the pipelines, the way that they're being built today, need automated unit testing, and then anything and everything that you can think of to automate in terms of testing, UI testing, API, and continue to do performance testing. There are ways to manage it, not overbuilding your pipeline and making it run for 4 hours every build. That's not the intent of it. But there's a lot of strategies that are enforced by our templates that can give you smoke test versions of all the work that you're doing, maybe on a regression side. So there's a lot of decision making that needs to happen. What tests are actually going to be relevant that I want to pull over to my pipeline without making it run too long. So the combination of those two make that possible. From the analysis side of the house, we send out a significant amount of dashboards. And those dashboards look at information based on the tooling from two very important perspectives. Number one, we have dashboards that specifically give you indications on what's going on so you can monitor your supply chain. If some memory spikes, that could be an indication that there's something malicious running on the server, running in the background that's causing the container to behave that way, and alerts will be triggered. And then the other thing that we're looking at is trying to give essentially management a one-stop place to go, one-stop set of dashboards to see all the tools that are being exercised throughout the day that make up the DevSecOps process. So again, I'll say this is why we talk about a tool agnostic, or what we call this single pane of glass approach here, is that most organizations right now are not just using a monolithic platform to do all of their tooling for them. They're using a little bit of this tool. They're using different security scanning tools, different programming languages, different repositories, GitHub versus GitLab versus anything else that's out there. So there needs to be a solution that actually brings all that information together in one spot so that you can see everything that's going on in your day-to-day. So no matter which direction you go, you're probably using multiple tools. So, and that's essentially from a tooling standpoint, what constitutes our D360 software factory. So I'm about to jump in the demo, but before I get there, I did want to mention one of the important tools, and one of the tools from Inflectra that we really like and really appreciate, and have a game plan in place to include in our software factory. Again, speaking to that tool agnostic approach, this gives us an opportunity to bring in Inflectra's Spire plan to do requirements management. And the reason we love this tool is because it lets you do brainstorming sessions in a very easy, slick-looking interface to organize those requirements into a hierarchy, and then be able to assign priorities to them, to capture use cases, to generate test coverage reports. And probably most importantly is requirements traceability. So, back into your QA, back into your proper planning processes, Spire Plan gives you the ability to, it gives you the full gamut of what you're expecting from a requirements management tool. So we'll mention this a little bit more once we get into the demo. But now that we are here, I will go ahead and toggle over. And let's take a look at how this all comes together. So here's the front end of the software factory. It's a web-based application. And then what we're looking at here, again, thinking back to what I had brought up at the beginning of the presentation, is the way that the DoD CIO breaks down the DevSecOps development cycle. So we have 10 phases here. And basically what this is going to keep track of for us is the phases that we're in, broken down by activities, and then keep track of how and when we complete them. So in this example here, a good way to illustrate this, because we're working in tools pretty heavily, is to take a look at the build phase. So you don't necessarily have to go in order. They're broken out by phase. Some things go in order, some things can be accomplished right up front. And what we want to look at here to start with or draw your attention to is this SSDF column. So what this is the Secure Software Development Framework published by NIST. This is 800-218 NIST standard. And this breaks down what this is a mapping of the activities. And then once you accomplish these activities, you've essentially accomplished the items inside of the SSDF. So this is what's giving us our ability to stay within compliance and standard implementation. And this NIST framework keeps track of auditing your SDLC process. It's important and brings some auditing capability to any of the automation that you're doing for your CI/CD pipelines, and then code integration as it moves throughout the supply chain. So always coming back to the supply chain. But you'll see here that each activity has a description. It has input and output, so we can keep track of all the ins and outs, all the artifacts that are being generated. And then probably most importantly is the tool dependency. So this tells us right up front. Now notice it didn't tell you a particular tool. It just told you a genre of tool that you're supposed to be implementing so that you can check that activity off as being complete. So this is where we bring in our AI agent. And essentially what's going on here is we're going to ask the agent what tools it recommends to stand up, to get us going with our CI/CD process. And what it's responding with here is a list of tools. We have an open source GitLab. So again, remembering that we have a container backend of various different tools, various different library of tools. One of them's an open source, simple open source version of GitLab for our code repository, a Jenkins instance for our build tool, and then using SonarQube to do some static code analysis and quality analysis scanning. So admittedly, this has a bit of a bias, if you will, because it knows, and we've been fine-tuning this agent for a while now, and it knows what tools we have available immediately. But keep in mind, this is also meant to be tool agnostic, and if we were in an organization that needed something different, it would suggest different tools. So what it's doing right now is, now that it knows what tools we want to set up, it's actually going to go out and turn those containers on and start off by giving them their initial configurations and setting them up with the secure configuration templates. So that's essentially what's being accomplished right now. And now we have 3 different tools that are actually executing, and we'll see that in a second. The next thing that it's going to do here is set up a simple pipeline. So this is a very, very hello world version of the pipeline template, but hopefully seeds the idea here. What this is going to do is push this into Jenkins, and it's essentially going to wrap together the 3 tools that it just stood up. But they'll be executing, and it'll execute this file out of Jenkins. Again, this is where I like to call out the automation. Because not only are we going to be able to stand up the tools, but we're going to be able to do the configuring and the interacting with these tools through the AI agents. Again, going back to some of the hardest things that, at least, from our observations over the past 3 years, when we initially thought putting together this type of a tool set would be a good idea, was that there's a lot of teams out there, and certain teams can struggle with having the know-how and the skill set and the focus of putting together all of these tools. And now we have an AI agent assistant here that helps us not only stand up the tools and configure them, but then start doing stuff inside them that we would normally have to do manually. So I could have copied this code here and I could have pasted it into Jenkins myself, but what the AI agent is doing for us is actually doing that work and checking it into the GitLab repository. And now we essentially have 3 tools that are running, and a pipeline is executing in the background that we'll see in a second. So keeping in mind here, we just completed something, so we're going to want to check that off the list. And when we do, you can see the activity bars expanding, and basically a rinse and repeat to get to the rest of the activities in any of the phases. But here's the tools running. Now that they've turned on, we can go into these different sections broken down by DevSec and Ops and see the tools that it enabled. And if we want to get into those tools, we click the card and we can see the pipeline that we created and added. Went through a series of steps here. There's not much to those pipelines, so all it did was do a simple check-in and probably write out some echo messages, just to get the initial framework going. But from here, we could continue to use the AI engine to make the pipeline more elaborate, or start filling it out manually. And then here's the rest of the interface. We have administrator section for creating users. This is how we can manually turn on various different tools inside of the product if we wanted to by hitting the enable button. We have those development tools. We have a number of security scanning tools that you can see, and a few operation tools in this setup. But there's a whole library of different things that we have and have available. And then for anything that's external, you remember I said we could connect to external tools, and this is how we give the AI engine access to the data that it needs to make decisions and help users, guide them through how to continue to use these tools. So here's all our external connections. And as mentioned, we have plans to work with Inflecture to bring Spira Team into this stack. And then also noted here are the different LLMs that we are working with for various different reasons. The AI engine that we're working with right now is using an older version of Llama that we've been tuning for a while now. But as we get more familiar with these, the capabilities of these other models, we are working towards implementing all of these so that they become available and they're actually built and made available in this technology stack. There's a process that goes on behind the scene depending on what learning language model you select, but essentially the formula for building those learning language models and making them available to the AI assistant is essentially the same. And that over time is going to make the AI agent smarter and more accurate. And then the last thing that we'll look at here is the dashboard. So these are the real-time dashboards. And as I mentioned, for each of these phases, we have one that's looking at it from a utilization standpoint, and another dashboard. You can have multiple dashboards in any of these phases here that keep track of basically the memory usage that's going on and keeping track of the supply chain. Anything that goes through pure violation is going to shoot out an alert. This would be a view of the planning phase, so we can see that type of work. So again, these dashboards are here so that what I like to call management has a one-stop shop to go to, and they can see everything that's going on with any tool that is connected here. And again, we're going to find organizations that are already using tool sets, and it's very easy to connect all the dots so that you can see the information in these dashboards here. And then there's going to be some that the organization doesn't have. They're out of compliance, if you will, with the NIST framework. So we give them the quick ability through the AI agent to turn those tools on, fill those holes, and start checking the boxes off. And now you have a very nice beginning to end view of what completion looks like. All right, so that is how it comes together in a nutshell. Can I turn it over to you, Rick, for any questions?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. I think it was extremely interesting. I'm just always amazed every time I attend one of these webinars what people are doing with AI and how they're utilizing it and really making their jobs easier and in the end making themselves more efficient. So I think this is really interesting. I'm looking forward to working with you guys in the future for sure. So how is this solution different from other AI code generation agents like Copilot?
Yeah, so we're certainly well aware of Copilot and all the work Microsoft is doing with that. And there's a lot of agents at that same level. AWS has their version. I believe GitLab and AWS together are working on a version. A lot of what goes into those are heavily, it's expensive to train those any of the LLMs that they're using and to build those types of agents. Eventually they're going to want to make a collection on, they're going to want to get their money's worth on all the tuning and the developing and the training that is going into these models here. And I'll tell you what, that a lot of the open source models that are out there right now, the ones that we've been using and the new ones that have come out over the last couple of months, strike me as just as powerful. So we're really focused on leveraging those. And like I was mentioning before, wrapping multiple models, not just relying on our own or even spending the time to train our own models outside of just basic tuning, but to put a combination of those together so that we have the ability to tell the agent to consult multiple models as opposed to using just one. So in that way, we think we're in a good position to compete with anything that might be going on. Like a Copilot is probably the most well-known example. And the other thing that we notice out there, and why we're trying to stick with open source, a lot of open source tools and a lot of open source models, is that the features are just rolling out like crazy all the time. When we look at OpenAI and companies like NVIDIA, their focus or their approach is to try to wrap together LLMs with hardware. Like they want to be the companies that offer both because they believe that's what's going to give the best accuracy. That's what's going to give the best performance in the long run. So we don't want to overcommit to something like, a high grade commercial AI agent at this point, because there's just so much more that could be coming out in the future. It's easy to spend a lot of money implementing something that might quickly become obsolete. And, I think we've seen that over the past couple of months.
How accurate are the responses from the AI agent?
Well, like I've said, it's taken us. We put a lot of effort in over the past couple of months. We've it's a lot of building it, training it, observing it, not liking it, pulling it apart, and starting that process over and over again. But again, our strategy in the long run is going to be finding ways to maintain like some base memory so we don't have to keep retraining it. There's strategies out there that we've been learning over the past couple of months that are fairly common, and that information is being shared. So it's going to be a matter of providing more resources or tools. Tools meaning, it could be the tools that we just demoed here. They all have APIs. They all have the ability to go grab that information. So we have to come up with slick ways of putting together these, call it an LLM pipeline, so that it knows to go to a database and then verify things from another source, verify things from another LLM. Some custom programming that we've had to wrap around it to make the solution hold together a little bit better. And slowly but surely, we've been getting much better results in the accuracy. So we're almost sure that's going to be the way that things have to continue throughout the next couple of months as new features roll out. And we want to grab some of those new features that are made available in the open source stack.
What does a product roadmap look like for your software factory?
I guess, delineating from where I think we've seen a kind of an explosion in the code generation. There's a lot of that out there. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So our focus is really going to stay on the SDLC and staying standards driven through those DevSecOps processes. So we're going to have the AI agent more or less continue to work more granularly with the tools that we have. There's a lot more that can go into the interaction. There's a lot more of, being a true assistant for a person that wants to get the most that they can out of SonarQube, but doesn't want to spend hours researching it or going to long, all-encompassing trainings and just get to what they need. So we'll invest more on the AI agent providing that type of support. We also see a lot of potential growth for automating more of the automation. One thing that our team is working on currently is taking in multiple sources of data through CSV files or hitting up external databases and being able to generate reports on the fly. So the AI agents these days are all starting to inherit that capability, and really focusing more on guidance. I said this before, but I don't want it to get missed. In the beginning, when we were doing this 3 years ago, before this Gen AI stuff really started to explode, we would have to come in, we'd bring this product in, and we'd have to start off always by doing some type of assessment with the customer. And every managed service basically has that approach. You want to know what the customer's doing today, the things that they're doing well, and give them a picture of the things that they can improve upon. And I think that there's a lot of potential to have the AI agents really provide that type of support. So it becomes less of a managed service, it becomes less of consulting, it becomes more about the assessment and analysis is built into the product itself, much more than it ever has been.
I have one last question. You mentioned earlier how the tool will work on on-premise applications. Will it work as well on an air-gapped system as well?
Work on an air-gapped system, or it has to? Yeah, I think I understand the question. We haven't had a true test case for air-gapped environments yet. Okay. But that's something that I was probably going to bring up next, is that we're looking for real use cases at this point, especially those edge environments. So, the answer is right now we haven't done that type of work yet, but if we had the ability to partner with a group that needed that, I'm sure we could accomplish what we needed to accomplish.
All right. Well, that sounds good. We'll keep that in mind. Okay. Well, Patrick, I really appreciate your time today. I see you put up your contact slides here.
Yeah.
If anybody would like to reach out, what's the best way? It looks like you've got several here.
Yeah, let me just a closing comment here. So kind of alluded to this just a minute ago, but this product, I realize what we have has been using a lot of DoD nomenclature, has been very, has been kind of born out of the DoD and the CIO and that influence that has been on there. But what we're really looking to do at this point is not only look for government organizations to partner with, to take this product and start using it on real world use cases, but definitely looking for any commercial partners that would be willing to engage with us and be part of our pilot program. Again, with a focus of trying, first of all, defining, is there anything meaningful that we could do from an SDLC standpoint and work to automate that in a variety of different ways with the AI agents and some of the tooling that we have on the back end. So we're looking for those types of groups that be willing to work with us in this pilot program going forward over the next couple of Q1 next year and onward. But yep, my contact information, phone number, email, and find our website, and there's a contact form there as well.
All right. Well, Patrick, again, thank you very much. I hope your Red Sox do better next year, and I'll be pulling for them a little bit. I know I'm pulling for the Rockies, so there's not much hope there. But at any rate, thanks everybody for joining us for this Inflector webinar. We hope to see you in the future.